How to get good at fighting games. This is a question that many people have asked me, but why bother asking me when you can ask IGN, one of the most popular video game YouTubes in the world? And this is actually a guide written by Jurassic Rabbit or Mitchell Saltzman, who, funny enough, I've actually coached before. So this is really interesting. This is like, I coached Mitchell, I think for 2024 Evo and Guilty Gear Strive. He's a pretty good player. I think he made it to Celestial and Guilty Gear. And we actually have some more credentials for him. Funny enough, he beat up one of the developers in Guilty Gear Strive during the Guilty Gear Strive Sin showcase. So he's actually pretty good at fighting games. And I'm really curious to see him plus the efforts of IGN, what they can put together to talk about how to get good at fighting games. So I haven't watched this before. Let's take a look.
Very few who play fighting games, and that's a bummer because I love fighting games. But I also understand that it's not the easiest of genres to break into. While simple inputs, auto combos, and modern controls may make it easier for people to get in at a casual level, if you're...
Alright, you might need to go back for coaching. This is only diamond. Wait, this isn't even diamond. This is platinum 1. Mitchell, if you want to get that that Vanquisher status, let me know. I got you.
If you're interested in fighting games but feel like you don't even know where to begin when it comes to learning how to play them or enjoy them on a deeper level, here are some tips to get good at them. The 2D ones, anyway.
Interesting. I think there's a lot of crossover between 2D and 3D fighting games, but I mean, I guess we'll see where they take this. Like, how do I put this? Like, if the crossover between like Grand Blue and Street Fighter is like an 80% crossover, then like the crossover between like Grand Blue and Tekken is probably like 50 or 60%. So like, I feel like you could include 3D games, just have like a few extra caveats. Maybe we'll talk about that at the end.
Quick note, this is a massive topic that can cover everything from the most basic of basics to high-level concepts and techniques that you'll see pros utilize.
Wait, we need to talk about...
Try to script out a...
I'm not trying to rank check, but C rank? Bro, my mom could get at least S rank in Grand Blue. Come on, bro. I know you're a better player than that.
And if people enjoy it, maybe
we're 1600 MR. That's pretty good.
Start with what
I feel like if you hit 1600 MR, you can easily hit like S plus in Grand Blue.
Believe to be the #1 most important thing when it comes to getting good at fighting games. The key to enjoying.
Okay, look, all right. I will stop rank checking, but you're making a video about how to be good at fighting games, and the clip you include is the Luke whiffing a grab, and then you DIing. Like, I feel like you could have like put any 5 seconds of gameplay here, it would have been more flattering than this.
The key to enjoying difficult games like Dark Souls, Elden Ring, and especially roguelites is to understand that dying is all part of the experience. Every death is a lesson, and part of the skill of those games is applying those lessons to future attempts and learning from your mistakes. But to have that clarity of mind to be able to do that, you have to be okay with failure. There's a common expression in the FGC. You have to get washed to get clean. And it's true. There's just...
That's correctly attributed to. People say I say that, but it's actually I just stole it from Yipes.
But you always have to remind yourself that losing is part of the process, and that there's always more to learn. So don't let thoughts of, I suck, or this is too hard, ever stop you. You will improve, and the feeling of overcoming or learning how to better deal with a tactic or character that previously gave you trouble is one of the most powerful feelings in fighting games, and one part of what makes it such a special genre.
Yeah, I'd agree. So step 1 is basically don't be afraid to lose, and I think that is honestly probably the most important thing. If I could recommend to anyone, if you really want to get good at fighting games, you cannot be afraid to lose. I think 2 reasons this matters is 1, people kind of pigeonhole themselves into just playing against people that they're better at or better than. And if you do that, like, you'll kind of stagnate, right? And the second thing is a lot of people like ask questions like, hey, I keep losing. I'm not sure how to get better. And it's like, really, you're doing the right thing. The more you lose, you'll understand like what's not working. You can steal things from your opponents. If you're afraid to lose and you don't put yourself in that position in the first place, it's hard to get better. Same thing with like playing ranked. Like, a lot of people are kind of afraid to play ranked because like, oh, if I play ranked, I'll just lose. But it's really important to like, let's say in a game with a good rank system like Street Fighter, the way you can like improve is you have to figure out where you are first. So like, if I don't know what like my current skill level is, it's really hard to gauge my improvement, right? Like, if I'm going to the gym and I'm just lifting random weights and I don't actually track what I'm lifting, right? And I just like lift whatever I feel like a random number of times, and it's really hard to gauge if you're improving or not, right? You might be improving, and same thing with Street Fighter. The more you play Street Fighter, like the likely are you improve. But if you want something to improve more efficiently, you have to be able to like understand where you're at, and that means, you know, potentially pushing yourself to failure, which in this case means losing.
Characters with dive kicking special moves, which allow them to halt their aerial momentum and dive downwards at an angle, like Cammy in Street Fighter 6, are a little unique in that if their dive kick hits high on your guard, it's generally your turn, and may even be an opportunity to punish. But if they hit low, like around the feet, it's not your turn. There are some exceptions, but generally this is how dive kicks work in most 2D fighters. Special moves and attacks that have an exceptionally slow
interesting
startup
thing to
animation
put in the
have
beginner
a fairly
guide.
good chance of being what's known as plus on block, which in fighting game terms simply means it's not my turn on defense. Examples of this include Ken's heavy Dragon Lash kick in Street Fighter, Soul's Fafnir in Guilty Gear Strive, Bai's charged S1 in 2XKO, etc. But as a general rule of thumb, if you press your fastest button after blocking something and notice that you're getting counter hit, you should make a mental note of that and say, okay, probably not my turn after I block that move.
Yeah. Okay, so interesting. Yeah, this is I feel like rule number 1 is perfect. Rule number 2, I feel like that went a little more in depth. I feel like if you're a new player, really all you need to know is in 2D games you block low, default block low unless it's something you can react to, and then block high. And then Tekken, it's the reverse, so it's default block high, and then if you something you can react to, or if you have a read, you block low. Things can either be your turn or the opponent's turn. It's really hard to tell. There's a bunch of rules, but the best way to tell is you just block a lot. But if something is really slow, chances are it might be their turn instead. But the way to tell is like sometimes just hit a button after, and if you get counter hit, then don't press the button there again. That's the best way to think of it until you get better. And I think the best rule of thumb is like just understand that some things are your turn, some things are their turn, and the best way to tell is just try pressing a button after. And if your button's winning, then it's your turn. If your button's losing, it's their turn, and stop pressing buttons there. Yeah, that's a very good way to put it. Touch the stove to see if it's hot. Except the stove is virtual and it won't actually hurt your hand. It'll just be in the short term, you know?
Pick a character that does what you want to do. If you want to play patiently, hanging back, throwing projectiles, and making it hard for your opponent to come to you, find a zoner character like Guile in Street Fighter.
Actually, Undesired, I was thinking about making a video about that. Yeah, so there's a French streamer that did 120 hours of labbing, and he actually made a lab chart. I was actually talking to Nuji about this yesterday. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, this is the chart about Street Fighter, by the way. This is how you play Street Fighter according to an iron ranked Street Fighter player who spent 120 hours in the lab. That's why I like the approach this video takes, which is don't be afraid to fail and go into matches and play, right? Because if you aren't afraid to fail and instead you spend that time doing shit like this, it's like it's going to be less efficient with your time.
Once you've got your character, focus on these 3 things primarily. How do I land a hit? What do I do when my opponent jumps? What do I do when I land a hit? Let's break down each of these individually.
It's a pretty good structure.
It's hard to talk about generally because it really does depend on what game you're playing and what character you're using. A slower paced 2D fighter might favor a more patient and reactive style of poking, anti-airing, and capitalizing on your opponent's mistake, while something like 2XKO encourages a much more aggressive and mix-up heavy style of play. In any case, here are some of the ways you'll be landing hits in fighting games. Think of this like your toolbox, and credit to glossary.info.net for these definitions.
It's an interesting way to, I guess I could talk over it. Perfect segue for reactions. But yeah, I think what they're getting at here is you want to start with a couple tools, right? Like there's obviously so many different ways you can get a hit. And so you don't want to go too deep. You kind of want to be very broad about this kind of stuff. And so what I look for when I play a new character in a fighting game is like, what's like the major way I can get my hits, right? So for example, if I'm playing Ryu, it's like, all right, I have a fireball. Let me throw that fireball and let me try to anti-air, right? It's stuff like that. Like if I'm playing Giovanna, it's like, all right, my dash into 2S or 5K is really good, right? If I'm playing Vi in this game, it's like, all right, my S1 is really, really good for getting in. And then it's like learning the situation after that happens is really, really important, right? This is a lot of jargon. I think as a new player, Bro, it doesn't matter like about this jargon stuff. You can get the masters in like any fighting game without knowing what a frame trap actually is, and playing more based on like vibes and noticing that like, or like same thing with tick throw. Like I'm sure there's people that hit masters that like know that if you do a jab jab in the throw, it's a strong strategy. But you don't need to actually know the jargon, right? But I like the ideas. Like I also in 2D games, I think learning how to anti-air is free, or like learning maybe let's say in like a game like I don't know, Grand Blue, it's like they have a lot of like really slow neutral skippy tools. It's like, how do I stop this, right? Not just necessarily anti-air, but like if an opponent keeps doing something. So for example, in like Street Fighter, there's, yes, you can like prevent them from anti-airing, but you can also prevent them from drive impacting, right? And it's like these tools that are really, really strong at low level and just instantly get you in almost always have a weakness. And it's like, how do I stop this, right? I think that's like one of the most important things to learn in a fighting game is like, how do I stop the scrubby options that let them get in for free, right? So usually that's jumping, but in games like Street Fighter, that's also like drive impact, drive rush, that sort of thing. And then it's like, yeah, what do I do if they're not doing any of that stuff? Which for you, it's like, okay, let me throw fireballs and like chunk their drive gauge, right?
As for what to do when the opponent jumps, this is where your anti-airs come in. Ideally, you'd have an anti-air combo that can punish someone.
Anti-airs are so important in like pretty much every fighting game I've ever played. If you just get really good at anti-airs, like that's a skill that will never be wasted.
After the anti-air. And what do I do when I land a hit? This is where it's time to put that combo you've been practicing to use. Remember that it's more important to learn an easy combo that you can land 100% of the time than it is to learn a harder, more damaging combo that you drop half the time or more. Just like with anti-airs, you also want to take note of the situation after you land a combo. Do you have time to pressure your opponent after your combo lands, or does it leave you too far away? Plan for what you're going to do after the combo ends so that you can either keep your pressure going or hang back to establish your zoning if that's where your character is strong at. Don't forget throws either. Throws will beat blocking, and in some games are extremely strong and can lead to damaging combos by themselves. Start off with these three things, and once you feel comfortable with these fundamentals, that's when you can start looking into other ways to open your opponents up, either with high-low mix-ups, strike-throw mix-ups, frame traps,
I generally agree with all this.
spacing traps to try and set up easier whiff punish opportunities, etc. You'll notice in the previous point that
so I generally agree with all this. The one thing I would say is I think you want to keep combos as simple as possible. So like even if you're just starting off, like I would deprioritize maybe like a corner combo, because in most games like you don't actually get that much more damage in the corner outside of like Grand Blue. Like so for example, Under Night, I still don't know a corner combo with one Jerky. I played that game for like 2 weeks and I hit the highest rank, right? So I don't think you necessarily need optimal corners like in most games. But other than that, yeah, I think it's like the one thing I would say that they didn't really mention is like if you're gonna deprioritize that, I'd prioritize what you do after you get the hit, right? So for example, like I would learn like a combo, and then like after you knock them down, what do you do, right? So it's usually like, how do you stop mash? Because new players love the mash. So it's like, how do I do something that like hits them media, like hits them as I get up, right? So like maybe for example, like if I'm Ryu and I do my corner combo, I can hold up forward and then it's a safe jump, right? Like something like that is very, very valuable to have as a new player, as opposed to like, you know, being super optimal with your actual combos, right?
Wake-up reversals are a very powerful technique that can get an aggressive enemy off of you, but the risk-reward balance is not in your favor. You land an invincible reversal, you deal a decent chunk of damage, and reset the situation to neutral. That's not bad, but if they block it, you are very likely going to lose a substantial amount of life, and then just repeat that same situation. Now, of course, this isn't to say that you should never jump or do an invincible reversal. It's always good to show that you're willing to use them as a tool, and you can use the threat of them to get yourself out of bad situations. But
yeah, I think that's the key, is like new players either never jump or reversal, or they always jump and reversal, right? And it's like usually the key between like beginner and intermediate period is finding out that there's actually a window where you want to do the stuff somewhat and with purpose, right? So for example, if the opponent's always pressuring you, then you want a reversal. But if the opponent's never pressuring you, you never want a reversal. Those kind of decision trees, I think, is what kind of brings people up from the beginner level.
as mentioned at the very beginning, there's so much more that we could cover. But this video is already pretty long for a beginner's guide, and if you did make it all the way to the end, well, thanks a bunch. I hope it helps.
You're welcome.
Thanks for watching, and for everything else in the world of video games, keep it here on IGN.
Thank you, IGN. Overall, that's a good video. Maybe it's a little, if you're a new player, let me know in the comments below what you kind of think about this kind of style of video. I think overall, maybe it's a little too dense on information. That's kind of the vibe I get from chat and myself is like, I think fighting games, especially if you're a new player, you kind of have to do it like brick by brick, right? And it's like you have to slowly incorporate things over a long period of time and build that foundation of skill. But yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with comprehensive, even if like 2/3 of it, it glosses over your head. Like if you retain anything, then I think that's obviously a good thing, and it'll get you to where you want to be in the sense of how to get good at fighting games. A couple other beginner tips I would give, like if you are new to fighting games and like let's say you followed this guide, like where would you go after? Emphasis on system mechanics is really important. So I think learning all the system mechanics is honestly one of the first things I do when I learn a fighting game, because they're just really strong. Like for example, in Street Fighter, learning what drive rush does, learning what drive impact does, learning how to parry. Like other than like the system mechanics that don't get used much at high level, like if you watch a video and you see everyone's using this thing where they turn red or this thing where they turn green, that's probably your cue to like, okay, let me learn how to do this and like figure that out, right? I think that stuff's a lot more important than like how to fight specific character matchups. I feel like a lot of new players get hung up on like, man, I just can't beat Zangief and that's why I'm not good at this game. And you look and they're like still a beginner rank, and it's like realistically you just need to focus on yourself and like get really good at exploiting your character and the system mechanics, and naturally you just beat Zangief or whatever problem character you have, right? Other than that, yeah, I think it's good. I think just take it one step at a time and emphasis on the first point. I think if this video did anything right, it's that they put the first thing correctly, right? You have to get washed to get clean. I don't know about I don't know how clean this guy's getting. I feel like I would feel less clean after this kind of shower, but it's really true. Don't be afraid to lose and take lessons from those losses. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about this video, and I'll catch you all in the next one.